What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Blumhouse horror film, Night Swim, and how I think the filmmakers attempt to take a horror short film of the same name and turn it into a feature film ultimately missed the mark. And just so we're clear, this video will contain some spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie yet and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time, let's get into it. Night Swim is an American supernatural horror film written and directed by Bryce McGuire in his feature directorial debut, and it's based on the 2014 short film of the same name by McGuire and Rod Blackhurst. The film stars Wyatt Russell and Carrie Condon, and the plot follows a suburban family who discover that their backyard swimming pool is haunted. Jason Blum and James Wan produced the film under their Blumhouse Productions and Atomic Monster banners, respectively, and this marks the first film from the two companies to be released following the merger. Night Swim was released in the United States by Universal Pictures on January 5th, 2024, and the film has mostly received negative reviews from critics, and at the time of the making of this video has grossed approximately $19 million worldwide off of a $15 million budget. And at the time of the making of this video, the movie happens to have an abysmal 25% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 120 critic reviews, with a better but still pretty bad audience score of 43%, and that's based on over 250 verified ratings. It has a rather mediocre Metascore of 43 on Metacritic, based on 31 critic reviews, with a user score of 5.2, and that's based on only 16 user ratings. And finally, it has a 5.0 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's based off of almost 2,500 reviews. So look, people are absolutely destroying this movie online, and I'm usually a person who likes to try to find something good in people's film work, mainly because I understand how hard it is to make a good movie. Hell, it's hard to make a movie, period, even in this day and age with all the technological advances in filmmaking. But what can I say? This was not a good movie. In fact, I would contend that this movie should have never been made at all. And that's primarily because the premise of this movie is deeply flawed. See, when you're coming up with the premise for your story, you have to understand how much that particular premise gives you to work with. There are some premises that work extremely well in short format, but when you take that premise and try to expand it, there just isn't enough there for you to make a credible feature film. And that's my big takeaway for this movie. A professional baseball player forced to stop playing because of an early MS diagnosis buys a house along with his wife, only to discover eventually that the pool in the backyard is haunted. That's what this movie is about. That's pretty much all it's about. And the biggest reason this premise doesn't work well in feature film format is because, given that it's simply put, the pool is haunted, not the house, for example. There's no monster or killer chasing people through the house or through the neighborhood trying to do them harm. That means in order to further the story, you have to keep your characters in the pool. So as I was sitting there watching this movie, I felt myself becoming frustrated about the fact that as more and more strange things started happening around the characters while they were in the pool, they wouldn't simply get out of the pool. For example, in the scene where Izzy, the daughter, and older sibling in the family is playing Marco Polo with Ronan, the boy she met at school and happens to have a crush on, he eventually gets out of the pool and essentially disappears. But Izzy doesn't notice, of course, because her eyes are closed. And as she wades deeper and deeper into the pool, some strange things start to happen. And you can actually see that Izzy starts to become nervous and tense, but despite that fact, she never opens her eyes to see what's going on around her until she's finally confronted head on by the evil spirit inhabiting the family's pool. And that's what's so frustrating about this movie. It forces you to work way too hard in order to suspend your disbelief so that you can try to enjoy the story that you're being told. And that ruins the movie watching experience, in my opinion. So the story is one that beggars belief. We've established that. On top of all that, the story outside the pool isn't all that interesting. Now, the baseball part of the story was minuscule and barely fleshed out, which makes me think they could have simply omitted it altogether and given the husband a different occupation. Now, the kicker in this story is that apparently the water in the Waller's pool is somehow connected to a magic spring that people used to worship thousands of years ago, wherein the spring would grant its worshipers their greatest desire, but in exchange, they had to sacrifice a life to the water in return. Now, we see this play out as Ray, the father, deeply cuts his hand while he and the family work to clean out the pool so that they can use it. And after the pool has been prepared for swimming and he gets in, he realizes that the cut on his hand has been completely healed. Then we see him become even more enamored by his backyard pool when he reluctantly agrees to take a few swings at his son's Little League baseball practice in front of a moderate crowd of young fans and their parents. And despite his medical condition, he's able to knock the cover off of a baseball while hitting a towering home run. So, of course, he spends the rest of the movie swimming in the pool, obviously trying to get himself back to the point where he can resume his baseball career. Now, the plot point about the mysterious water in the Waller's pool begs one to question, how did water from an ancient spring, something that sounds like it should be located far away in another country, get into a pool in an American suburb? Now, the writers attempt to address this question by having a pool technician state in a scene that the Waller's pool is fed by an underground spring, which is, from what I understand, a rarity for swimming pools. It's also an absolutely ridiculous explanation, in my opinion. And the why in horror movies are typically the most important part of the story. If the why is believable, you can just focus on the story and whether or not it's scary or at the very least entertaining. But if the why doesn't wash, then you simply spend the entirety of the film thinking that what you're watching is stupid. Beyond that, the writing in this film is fairly mediocre, but I won't go too hard about that because the writing in most horror films tend to be fairly ordinary, outside of maybe Jordan Peele's politically charged horror film Get Out. And speaking of Jordan Peele, I saw how the filmmakers borrowed from Jordan Peele, extending the pool in certain scenes with special effects, having it very closely resemble what Peele did in Get Out with the sunken place metaphor. Now, I thought it was pretty well done, even though it was complete filmmaking plagiarism. Now, the dark figure that inhabited the dark place at the bottom of the pool was not well done, though. And I think they would have done better just leaving it out altogether. Sometimes, in these types of movies, it's better to fear the unknown than to actually reveal it. It's kind of like how in Jeepers Creepers, I thought the tall man in the trench coat and hat was crazy scary until you got to the point in the movie where you realize he was a bat or a gargoyle or whatever. And after that, he became instantly less scary, even though I'll admit he was still quite formidable, but that's just my 2 cents. Overall, I give this film a 50% or 5.0 if you're thinking IMDb score. I think this film was just a bad idea all around. And again, I think it was mostly because the premise just didn't give the filmmakers enough to turn the short film into a credible feature. One thing I did actually like was the part about Ray not being the best and most present father, especially where his son was concerned. And him being given a chance to change that, with his medical condition keeping him from continuing his baseball career. Now, there are a few moments in the film where that particular storyline is advanced a bit, and the movie ends ultimately with him sacrificing himself in order to save his family, proving that I guess he had learned something. But that's the only part of the story I thought was decent, if I'm being completely honest. And though I also thought the actual film work was fairly decent overall, again, it just didn't make up for all the things that were wrong with this movie. And with that being the case, even with it being January, the time of year when horror movies tend to go to die, Blumhouse should have saved the $15 million they spent making this in order to invest it in something more worthwhile. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Night Swim yet? If you have, did you enjoy the movie? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you who might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go check out themadScreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. I'll catch y'all in the next video.